Imagine sitting down for dinner. The food is good. The service is friendly. You finish your meal, and the bill arrives. It says $48.50, but somehow that's not the amount you're expected to pay. Instead, you're expected to add another $10, not because it's required by law, not because the restaurant forgot to include it, but because that's simply how America works. For millions of visitors from around the world, this can be confusing, sometimes frustrating, even shocking. Why should customers be responsible for paying employees? Why doesn't the restaurant simply charge higher prices and pay its workers more? After all, most developed countries already do exactly that. Yet in the United States, tipping has become something much bigger than a small reward for good service. Today, Americans leave tips in restaurants, bars, coffee shops, hair salons, hotels, food delivery apps, ride-sharing services, and sometimes even self-checkout kiosks ask for one. Many people hate it, many people defend it, and almost everyone complains about it. So why hasn't it disappeared? The answer goes much deeper than restaurants. It's a story about slavery, railroads, the Great Depression, powerful restaurant lobbies, and an entire economic system built around one simple expectation, an expectation that millions of workers now depend on just to earn a living. This is the surprising history of why tipping culture exists in America. Why tipping culture exists in America. The surprising history behind America's most controversial tradition. Almost every American has asked the same question at least once. How much should I tip? 15%? 20? 25? What if the service wasn't very good? What if you only ordered coffee? Some people spend more time calculating the tip than choosing what to eat. The strange part is, this wasn't always normal. There was a time when many Americans absolutely hated tipping. Some even called it un-American. So how did a practice once widely rejected become one of the strongest social expectations in the country? To understand that, we need to travel back, not to America, but to Europe. Long before tipping became routine in America, it was a symbol of wealth, status, and social class. The custom took shape in Europe, especially in England and France, sometime between the medieval period and the 1700s. Wealthy nobles rewarded servants with a small extra payment, not because they had to, but because they wanted to display generosity. A tip wasn't really about the service. It was a public reminder. One person had the power to give. The other depended on receiving. By the mid-1800s, wealthy Americans traveling through Europe picked up the custom, believing it signaled sophistication and high society. They brought it home. But unlike Europe, many Americans reacted with anger. The country had been founded on the idea that all people were created equal. Tipping felt like importing a class system, one they'd fought a revolution to leave behind. One newspaper called it a badge of aristocracy. The opposition grew so strong that between 1909 and 1915, at least 6 states passed anti-tipping laws: Washington, Mississippi, Arkansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and Tennessee among them. Accepting or offering a tip could actually result in a fine. For a brief moment, it looked like tipping might disappear from America before it ever fully took hold. But history had other plans, because while lawmakers debated etiquette, another transformation, a far darker one, was reshaping the American workforce. When the Civil War ended in 1865, more than 4 million formerly enslaved people were finally free. Freedom, however, did not guarantee economic opportunity. Jobs were scarce. Discrimination was everywhere. At the same time, America's railroad industry was expanding at an astonishing pace. The Pullman Company, builder of the country's luxury sleeper cars, became one of the single largest employers of black labor in the United States. To impress wealthy passengers, Pullman hired thousands of porters. Their job was demanding. They carried heavy luggage, prepared sleeping compartments, shined shoes, served meals, stayed on call almost every hour of the journey. But there was one problem: the company paid them little, or almost nothing at all. Instead, Pullman told them their income would come from the passengers, from tips. For the railroad, it was the perfect business model: lower payroll, lower operating costs, higher profits. The cost of labor had quietly shifted. from the employer to the customer. This is the uncomfortable root of American tipping. It's scaled specifically because it let a major employer avoid paying its black workforce a real wage in the decades right after emancipation. And it made that decision look like the passenger's generosity, not the company's choice. Hotels adopted the same model, then restaurants, then barbershops. Soon, entire industries discovered they could advertise low prices, while quietly depending on customers to cover their payroll. For workers, this created constant uncertainty. A day's earnings no longer depended only on effort. It depended on who walked through the door. A generous customer might double their income. A slow night, or a hostile one, could leave them unable to pay rent. And because upsetting a customer didn't just risk a complaint, it could mean losing part of the paycheck. Porters and servers alike were expected to stay endlessly deferential, no matter how they were treated. What began as a cost-saving strategy was quietly becoming part of America's economic foundation. By the early 1900s, tipping had spread across much of the service industry, but it was still controversial. Some restaurants even experimented with a simple idea: no tips, just fair wages. For a while, it seemed possible. Then came 1929, the Great Depression. Millions of Americans lost their jobs. Restaurants were hit especially hard. Profit margins turned razor-thin, and owners searched for any way to cut costs without raising menu prices. For many, the answer was obvious: rely even more heavily on tips. Let customers cover a larger share of payroll. Keep the prices on the menu looking low. What began as an emergency measure didn't disappear when the economy recovered. Then in 1938, the U.S. government passed the Fair Labor Standards Act. The law created the first federal minimum wage, along with rules for overtime and child labor. It was one of the most important labor reforms in American history. But it came with one major exception: tipped workers. Congress allowed employers to pay tipped employees a much lower direct cash wage, as long as tips covered the gap up to the full minimum. This became known as the tip credit. Today, that federal tipped minimum wage still sits at just £2.13 an hour, unchanged since 1991. The standard federal minimum wage, itself frozen since 2009, is $7.25. In theory, if a worker's tips don't add up to the full minimum wage, the employer has to make up the difference. In practice, enforcement is inconsistent, and the gap is hard for underpaid workers to prove. Over the decades, 7 states, including California, Washington, Nevada, and Oregon, broke from the federal model, entirely requiring the full state minimum wage before tips. In those states, a tip functions closer to what the rest of the world imagines a genuine bonus. But across most of the country, tipping isn't extra, it's the wage itself, delivered table by table, decided by whoever happens to walk in that night. If tipping began as a way to cut labor costs, why do Americans still do it today? Because over a century, it stopped being a payment. It became a social expectation. For decades, 15% was the standard, then 20% became the norm. Now digital screens in some cities suggest 20, 25, even 30%. What was once a generous reward is increasingly treated as the minimum. Technology accelerated this shift. Around 2010, companies like Square introduced tablets that flip the screen toward the customer, and by default, that screen asks for a tip. Large buttons display suggested percentages. The no-tip option is often smaller, or tucked behind another menu, and because an employee is often standing a few feet away, many customers feel uncomfortable pressing it. Psychologists call this social pressure. People instinctively avoid looking selfish while being watched, even when they hadn't planned to tip at all. This phenomenon now has a nickname: tipflation. Coffee shops, frozen yogurt counters, food trucks, self-checkout kiosks, places that never used to rely on tips at all, now ask for them by default. Surveys from the early 2020s found a majority of Americans reporting genuine tip fatigue, a sense of being asked to tip more, often in more places for less obvious reasons than ever before. Part of that is real wage support for underpaid workers. Part of it is simpler than that. Once a piece of technology makes asking effortless, businesses have very little reason not to ask. For supporters, the argument is simple. Good service deserves a reward. A great server can earn far more than someone who provides poor service. And in busy, high-end restaurants, experienced staff sometimes out-earn what a fixed hourly wage would ever pay them. But critics point to serious problems underneath that upside. When income depends on strangers, workers don't just provide service. They manage emotions. They stay friendly through rude behavior, unreasonable requests, sometimes harassment because pushing back might mean losing the tip, and losing the tip might mean not making rent. Researchers have documented this pattern extensively, especially among women in tipped roles. There's also inconsistency. A server in a wealthy neighborhood might clear hundreds of dollars on a busy night. Someone doing the identical job in a slower part of town might struggle to make minimum wage at all. And there's the long shadow of how this system began. Because tipping scaled through industries that leaned heavily on black labor. In the decades after emancipation, historians point to it as a structure that let employers avoid paying fair wages to a workforce with almost no leverage to refuse. That inequality didn't stay confined to the 1800s, it shaped the wage floor. Tipped workers are still standing on today. Supporters say tipping rewards excellent service. Critics say it creates uncertainty, enables unequal treatment, and lets companies quietly offload responsibility for their own payroll. Both sides are really debating the same question. Who should pay for the cost of labor? The customer or the business? If so many people criticize the system, why doesn't America just get rid of it? Part of the answer is lobbying. The National Restaurant Association, sometimes nicknamed the other NRA, has spent decades fighting any attempt to raise or eliminate the tipped minimum wage, arguing it would force restaurants to raise prices, cut staff, or close. But critics note something simpler. A system where customers directly fund a large share of payroll is, for the employer, just cheaper than any alternative. Every tipped dollar is a dollar. The business doesn't have to pay, multiplied across an industry employing millions of people. Several states that have raised or eliminated the tipped minimum wage, including all of California, haven't seen the collapse the industry warned about. The debate continues, but the data has complicated that argument considerably. There's also a genuine split among workers themselves. Some want predictable income, benefits, and less dependence on a stranger's mood. Others, especially high earners in upscale restaurants, worry a flat wage would actually pay them less than tips currently do. And some lobby against reform for exactly that reason. A few restaurants have experimented with no-tip policies, raising wages and prices instead. Some succeeded. Others quietly reverted, because customers and staff both drifted back to what they knew. America hasn't chosen one answer. It continues to run both systems at once, state by state, restaurant by restaurant. For more than 150 years, tipping has survived wars, economic crises, and shifting social values. Today, it faces a different kind of pressure. For generations, tipping meant something specific. A waiter, a bartender, a taxi driver, someone providing direct personal service. Now the boundaries have blurred completely. A customer buying a coffee, picking up a sandwich, or checking out at a small shop may face a tip screen with no clear reason why. Digital payment has made tipping effortless with one tap, but also nearly impossible to avoid with a bright screen, a suggested percentage, and an employee watching a few feet away. The psychology has shifted. It's no longer only about gratitude. Sometimes it feels like an obligation, and yet the system persists, because every side still has something to protect. Workers want the possibility of higher earnings. Customers want control over rewarding good service. Owners want a structure that keeps menu prices looking competitive. The likely future isn't a clean abolition. It's a slow, uneven patchwork. Some industries shifting toward higher base wages, others holding on to tips, different states writing different rules, the way they already do. A few dollars left on a table can look like a small gesture, a simple thank you. But in America, a tip carries the weight of a much longer story. It began as a tradition borrowed from European elites. It survived because a railroad company discovered it could avoid paying newly freed workers a real wage, and an entire industry followed. It was hardened into federal law in 1938, defended for decades by one of Washington's most effective lobbies, and stretched by a tablet screen into corners of the economy. It was never built to reach. For some Americans, a tip represents freedom, the ability to personally reward someone who worked hard. For others, it represents a system, quietly asking customers to solve a problem employers created. Both are true at once. That's exactly why nothing has changed. The next time an American picks up a receipt, opens a payment screen, or leaves a few dollars behind, they're taking part in a 160-year-old compromise, one that many people question, but almost no one can escape.